cult members, and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler review of Wandavision episode 9, called the series finale.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. We're going to talk about the episode itself, the two post-credit scenes. There were two post-credit scenes, and maybe the series overall. Okay. But it's going to be spoiler-filled, so you've been warned. Here we go. I'm going to go cry. I'm going to curl up in a little ball and cry.
I knew something was going to happen because Kevin Smith posted on Instagram, and it was just, I've watched it 3 times, and him sobbing. Because it's Kevin.
Because it's Kevin. He cries at everything. Okay, the episode as a whole, we're going to go back and rewatch the whole series in one sitting. Somebody said today that if you do all the episodes together, it's a 5-hour run. So, okay. Which is pretty doable.
I know what we're doing on Sunday.
Yeah, probably. This episode, I need to sit with it probably a little bit more. I'm waffling between it being one of my favorite episodes or one of my least favorite episodes.
Okay.
And the reason for that is Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen deserve all the awards for that last scene.
Yeah.
And I'm in a much better mental state than I have been in the last 12 months. And I still want to cry my eyes out, which is why I'm waffling between this. I hate it and I love it at the same time.
I mean, I feel like it gave us kind of the closure. You know, we knew this was coming, right? I mean, we've always known because Vision is dead. He's been dead.
Right.
So you knew that.
And the version of Vision in Hex is made up.
Right. So, you know, you knew this was coming. So I felt like I appreciated it. They ended it. They did it in a good way. I'm not disappointed with how they did it.
Right.
The apparent transference of all of his memories, knowledge, whatever, into
white vision.
Yeah. You know, it opens a whole bunch of doors, and
we're getting West Coast Defense.
and you know, he's not dead. I mean, if he was ever alive,
right? He's
not dead because his memories and stuff live on, which is what we all want when we die, is for someone to remember us.
And so that particular, it's going to be a very uneven, out of order discussion tonight. So just let you know, the scene with real mechanical Vision and made up emotional Vision, them floating inside the library in the circular room, and them discussing the Hades ship or whatever, where they're talking about taking planks off of the ship. Is it still the original ship, or is it a new ship?
And that's a reference to, I think, a comic. I think it's something in the comics. I don't hate me, but I did read something about that. That's the ship of Thesis.
Yes, the ship of Thesis. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Is actually like
that scene where you're taking the humanity that is Vision, and you're taking the computer that is Vision, and having them actually talk finally to each other, in the quote unquote in the flesh, is amazing.
Yeah,
and it's not heartbreaking, but it's heart-wrenching to watch this realization of Vision learning who he is, really learning who he is.
Yeah.
Through both versions of himself.
Right.
And I wish that everybody has a chance to have that conversation with themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that. And that's part of the reason why I love this episode.
Yeah.
Is just that whole concept of Vision learning about himself.
Yeah.
And we're not losing Paul Bettany. Obviously, if they're setting up the West Coast Avengers, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's something down the line. It could be Phase 5. I don't know, but if you're going to set up White Vision, with Paul Bettany, that means we're going to get more Paul Bettany, which is fine. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I kind of expect it to be along the lines of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, we're going along with all these kind of hard... Now, I know nothing about the West Coast Avengers comics themselves. I mean, well, I wouldn't say nothing. I know a little bit, but not really any of the lore or anything. But I just, we were going along with Captain America and Iron Man and just the kind of diehard Avengers kind of thing, and now for something completely different. Guardians of the Galaxy, where we saw the first trailer and I was like, there's a raccoon? What? So I kind of feel like
tree.
And a talking tree. West Coast Avengers is kind of be that same kind of, and now for something completely different.
And it's very much it's a younger group of Avengers. They have different powers. They're based in the West Coast in LA instead of I want to say it's LA, the West Coast instead of the East Coast.
Obviously.
And you're going to have this Avenger, this sitting Avenger with Vision being kind of the team captain of all these kids. So you're going to get this concept of kids learning how to be people while being superpowered, while being the defenders of Earth on the west side of the United States.
It's kind of like Runaways a
little bit of Runaways, but Runaways, not everybody necessarily had powers.
Right.
And you didn't have like a parental guidance person over the top.
So one thing, and then I want to jump to the West Coast Avengers. I pointed out in that scene with Paul Bettany in the round that it was very Age of Ultron, where Ultron's sitting on the throne or whatever, and they're in that kind of round. So it kind of brought everything full circle.
It's also the conversation that Ultron and Vision had on the mountaintop,
right?
Where they're talking about what it means to be human existence and stuff like that.
So the West Coast of, I don't know if you want to talk about the closing scene.
We will get. I want to get to the closing scene a little bit.
Okay. That, what the theory is, could also lead into the West Coast Avengers.
Right.
So,
let's talk about Agatha Harkness. She was the big bad in this series. Everybody kept. Well, okay.
She was in the series.
She
as far
was
as
the
we
bad
know.
guy.
Yeah.
The big bad of the series was Wanda.
Well, yeah, okay, that's fair.
But Agatha was the bad guy, and this episode starts exactly where the previous one.
Yep.
Called Previously On.
Yep.
With her holding the boys, and Wanda starts making comments about, I'm not in the cellar anymore. I can use my power out here.
Yeah.
And Agatha says, that's what I want.
Right.
And it becomes very apparent very quickly that all Agatha wanted the entire time was Wanda's power.
Right. So the more Wanda fights using her power, because that's what she has, the more Agatha is like sucking it in.
She's full on rogue in this episode where she's just absorbing Wanda's power.
But at the same time, Wanda is losing her. Like, she is doing exactly what happened to the witches.
Yeah.
Her life force is being sucked out of her or whatever.
I like that throughout the whole fight between Agatha and Wanda, you're getting the poke from Agatha.
Right.
And it's done in different versions, and it's done different ways, and she takes the hex off of everybody and uses everybody in the town to guilt Wanda into doing everything.
Yep.
And then Wanda removes the hex, tries to remove the hex.
Starts to remove the hex so they can all get out.
So they all get out, and when she does that, Vision and the boys start to evaporate because they're figments of her consciousness within the hex.
And then Wanda finally remembers. It's like her accent. It comes and goes. She finally remembers that she can actually
do the hex thing,
mind mess
yeah.
with people, and I think that's the first time she's done that since Age of Ultron. And,
outside of what she's doing inside the hex,
right? But to go
yeah.
up and like put you into your darkest fear, which is what she did to everybody in Age of Ultron, and she does that to Agatha. Well, she sends her back to when she was attempted burned on the stake,
right.
with her coven, but that all kind of backfires, and then Wanda throws a car through her, and she ends up being the Wicked Witch of the
West, which I thought was amazing. Like another like sweet little Marvel, just like, hey, here's a little Easter egg kind of thing, because it's two witches fighting each other, so you have to have a Wicked Witch of the West and conversation. The point though where Wanda decides she's going to pick the family in that particular spot. She's going to pick her family over everything else,
right?
And her and Agatha start having the Neo Mr. Smith flying through the air fight, which I like. I like both. I like all the Matrix movies. Come at me, I don't care. I like the last two. I like that last fight in the rain. I don't care. I like it here too, because they're actually like using magic.
Right.
This is the fight we wanted to see with Gandalf and Sauron.
Right.
And all we got was them spinning around because it's two 80-year-old guys, and so you're not gonna have a proper like whatever fight. But this is like they're actually like full on witch fighting, and I really appreciate that. But every time Wanda missed, she was hitting the hex,
right?
And all this stuff was going on, and so it was really interesting to watch that. And then Wanda turned it all back around. One of the things that Agatha kept saying was, you just got this power. You don't know how to use it.
Right.
And
you need to learn
you need to learn and stuff. Yeah. And you got all this power from the Darkhold, which will be an interesting kind of what that could mean and stuff going forward. But the conversation that they kept having was, you don't deserve this power. And Wanda, like, I didn't ask for this, but I got it.
Right.
And she actually forms, inside the hex, she forms all the rune stones and takes all the power away from Agatha.
Yep.
Which I think is an amazing way to remove somebody's power in the process of explaining. You have somebody who just is absorbing power. How do you beat somebody like that?
Right.
Well, you make it so they can't absorb power.
Right.
And that also is a example of Wanda learning very quickly.
Yes. Yep.
And I just thought that was kind of a cool little.
Yeah, and I mean, she has been, right? That's been her kind of down low story since Age of Ultron. She's had to, learn how to deal with her power out in the public, like we talked about, where she was Civil War and she blows
Lagos,
up half
Lagos thing.
Yeah. So, that's, and this is kind of just the culmination of her having to deal with the grief of everything, and then trying to come up to speed as quickly as possible, because she was gone for like 5 years. So and then she comes back, and then there was this big huge battle, and oh yeah, by the way, Vision's dead, and now Tony's dead, and spoilers. And
if you're watching this, you know what's going on in the MCU.
Yeah, and so her just trying to deal with everything. So I mean, honestly, she's only been like had powers or whatever enhanced for what, maybe 7 years or so.
Yeah, and a lot of that time was busy fighting battles and not actually having the chance to work on controlling her power and doing all
she
stuff. She
was sequestered for a while, and then Vision came along,
and there's not like there's a ton of people running around with her level of witch power.
Right.
Doctor Strange.
Right.
Which is where we're going.
Right. Well, and they is it Agatha says something about the
Sorcerer Supreme.
the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
And now Wanda is more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
So that's
and she's got the
Wanda's,
Darkhold.
right, and she's
so,
a big thing in the next Doctor Strange.
A lot of people have been saying that she will be the big bad in what ends up being the Doctor Strange multitude of madness. Multiverse of madness. I like multitude of madness too. And especially what we got with the second of the post-credit scenes. But again, we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk about a little bit about Monica for a second. The Monica and the boys. Let's talk. We talked about Vision versus Vision, and there's a really cool like standoff scene in the town square at one point in time where White Vision is on one side of the street, Agatha's on the other side. They're in the air. There's Vision and Wanda and the boys in the middle of the street.
Right.
And this is after Monica decides to take her family and be with her family. Wanda decides to be with the family and stuff. Wanda says, "Boys, we haven't trained you for this, but this is why you're here." And Vision takes off to go against Vision, and Wanda takes off to do Agatha. And Wanda, when she takes off, says, "Take care of the military." And the boys, Tommy like hexes all of them and freezes them, and Billy goes and does all this stuff, and
then comes back with the hat and the glasses, which is kind of like Pietro in the X-Men. He like every time he goes around and he's always messing, and then I think he pops in with somebody's glasses at one point or something. He steals something from somebody. I think it might be the kitchen scene, but he does that same thing a bunch.
The hat and glasses reminded me very much of V, the TV show V. There was a 2000s one with Morena Baccarin, which is supposed to be really good, but we never watched it. But there was the old 80s one, and they all kind of had the same kind of Star Trek uniform with the hat and the glasses and stuff like that. And that was, for some reason, that was the one that kind of reminded me.
It's random.
But Hayward jumps out of one of the RVs and starts shooting at the boys, and Monica jumps out in front of them, and all the bullets phase through her except for one, and Tommy stops it. And they all kind of have a moment of hey, that was cool powers. Hey, that's cool powers. like it was kind of but it was the first we actually get to see Monica use her powers. Now she probably stumbled into it was very much she stumbled. I
don't think she used them, but
I think they got used for her.
And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, because she is very much just learning as she's going.
There's a couple times where she when she's captured by Pietro in his room, she figures out that the thing that Agatha has been using around is a necklace, and that's she kind of could see the pattern, or whatever took it off. Pietro was Ralph.
Well, she calls him Boner, but I think that it's actually pronounced Bonner.
Bonner,
the way it's spelled. But
Ralph,
that would be Agatha's husband. Everybody thought it was the rabbit. It was not.
Senor Scratchy. But that's
Pietro.
That's her son. I think
Nicholas Scratch.
Nicholas Scratch. Yeah. But so we find out who Pietro is. Monica shows her powers. The boys do their part in the fight.
Hayward tries to escape.
And Darcy hits him with the ice cream truck.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, it's not an ice cream truck. It's one of those big freaking troop transport hauler things. And I just love Darcy's comment of "Welcome to enjoy prison."
Hope you enjoy prison.
We didn't get nearly enough Darcy in this episode, but it's called Wandavision, not Darcy and Wong show. We get the big final fight that we talked about earlier, and in that final fight, Wanda pulls all of the energy out of Agatha.
Yep.
And in that process, she fully becomes the Scarlet Witch.
She Dark Phoenix's the Scarlet
Yes,
Witch.
yes. It's very much what it felt like was her taking all of Agatha's powers, her taking back all of her power, and also the just kind of upgrading herself, and she's in the what's going to be the modern Scarlet Witch outfit, which is very close to what the comic depictions were from Claremont and stuff like that, which is cool. I really like it.
Yeah, I liked it too.
It's superhero-y and appropriate, and it's not like over sexualized or whatever, and I thought it was really cool. Wanda sentences Agatha to the nosy neighbor life in Westview as the hex starts collapsing and stuff. But
where's she gonna live?
they'll figure out something. Probably in the house next door with the car in the living room right now. But the thing I want to talk about here the most is her Scarlet Witch's headgear.
Yep.
So she gets the full-on crown thing, and in the middle of it, it could be an M, or it could be Magneto's helmet.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it does look like Magneto's helmet on the front.
As all the shaping and everything, and it started to happen, and it kind of filled in. I'm like, oh my god, that's Magneto's helmet.
Yeah.
But
well, she's his daughter.
Yes,
in the comic.
Pietro and Wanda are Magneto's children, and that's why we kept thinking that with all the discussions of what this could be leading to with House of M and stuff like that, and her exploding out and showing us the multiverse, which is probably coming. Everybody thought we were going to get Magneto in there somewhere.
Right. Well, Paul Bettany didn't help that with his trolling.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
I got to work with this great thespian and blah, blah,
always
blah.
wanted to work
with. He was talking about himself.
He's talking about himself. And if we were all paying attention, this is how Paul Bettany's personality is.
Yeah.
And so we should have known that he was going to do something like this. Let's talk about the two post-credit scenes.
Okay. We're not going to talk about the end.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the end,
because there's a couple things in there. So they like the hex is closing. They go back home. They put the boys to bed. They have their kind of last words with the boys.
Right.
Not really. Not coming out and saying that, but
I feel like everybody knows.
But, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, because they were kids. But as they leave the room, Wanda says, "Thanks for choosing me as your mom."
Yes. They also say in their family is forever. They talk about when they're before they kiss the boys goodnight.
Yep.
Wanda talks about them.
So the "thanks for choosing me to be your mom" could tie into the second
post-credit
scene.
Yes.
And then the
Vision and Wanda's goodbye. Actually, them getting a chance. This is kind of what I talked about earlier with what Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen were able to give us in this scene. To give us this final moment that they actually get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And that they and the thing I loved most about that was they acknowledged that they've said goodbye before and they still came back to each other.
Right.
So they're laying it up for White Vision to show up with real Vision's memories.
Right.
And so he's going to show up at some point in time. He might be the thing that brings Wanda back in Doctor Strange 2. But that's huge speculation down the line. But they get their moment to kind of sit there and say, I've always loved you. The other big thing that came through that was Vision saying, I was a voice without a body, and then I was a body with no soul, and now I'm a memory with a future. It's something like that, where he talks about his stages of being this thing, and he finally asks Wanda, "What am I?" And she says, "You are wire and metal and blood and bone, and you are the part of the Mind Stone that is still within me. You are my memory. This is why we are connected," which is something that we've all been saying, but them finally just laying it out, like, this is who you are and stuff.
And then he sheds a tear.
One single tear.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
Which is apparently a callback to one of the Avengers comics where they're congratulating him on, becoming a member of the Avengers and, your compassion and all of this. And then he leaves the room and sheds a single tear. So that was
and it was nice
Easter egg for
to,
that.
it was nice to one last instance of showing Vision's humanity, because the other Vision has to work out his humanity.
Yeah.
And I love that the transference in the comic is they upload Wonder Man into White Vision.
Right.
But
this is actually Vision into Vision.
This is Vision into Vision. So it's Vision's memories, and he's going to work out who he is as a person.
Yep.
So we're going to get more of that going forward. But to have this last little moment of acknowledgement between Vision and Wanda, and just their true love for each other, not manufactured love, not fake love, yes, they are connected because of the Mind Stone, but they actually truly love each other.
Yeah.
And that moment is just heart-wrenching and amazing all at the same time.
Yep. And good. It was a good ending.
Yes. Okay, now can we talk about the two post-credit scenes?
Yes.
Okay, so the first post-credit scene, Wong is in control and in command. He's taken over as the
Woo.
Wong? Sorry. Woo.
Like, how did we get to that?
It starts with a W. Woo just kind of just steps in. He called somebody at Langley earlier.
Yeah.
And I heard Cliff, she heard Clint.
Yeah.
But the FBI shows up and they never really kind of explain it. So it could be anything. It could be something. I don't know. Whatever. So Wong is Woo. I caught myself after the fact. Woo is just kind of giving directions, and you go here, you do that, let's get the pharmacy set up for medical aid and whatever. And Monica walks over and they have a moment of, hey, this looks good on you. So Woo, I took a moment and paused. Woo is probably going to be the new acting head of S.W.O.R.D.
Right. Well,
that's what it feels like.
It's not going to be Hayward.
It's definitely not going to be Hayward. Enjoy prison. But it's just kind of it kind of sets him up for being like the connective thing with S.W.O.R.D. going forward.
There's
kind of
rumors that he's going to be back, so that would be fine.
Now, I still want the MCU X-Files thing with him and Darcy, but they already seems like they have a plan with him going forward. That's fine. An agent comes up and says to Monica, they want to see you in the theater. And so they turn around, they walk in the theater. I try to look at the the display out in front. I couldn't. I was trying to look at all the different things.
There was apparently what is the name of it? It's Return to Oz, which was
that the James Franco?
It might have been that one. Sam Raimi directed it. So that was a nod to him. And then there was also, it's a reference to Blade Runner, the final scene with Rutger Hauer in the rain crying. And he says something about, it's like
tears in the rain.
And it's like tenuous falls or something like that, and that's what the other one was.
Okay, that makes sense. I was trying to look at that while also kind of looking at all the people and what they're doing.
I cheated. I googled it.
Sometimes that's what Google is for. She goes in, and the agent follows her in, and they're the only two in the theater. There's nobody there, and the agent says the person in charge doesn't really say a name, but the person in charge is really impressed with what you have done. He heard that you've been grounded. He wants to speak to you, and she changes into a scroll.
Yep.
So we've been saying that there's scrolls somewhere in this show.
Yep.
A lot of people were saying that the person that brought the RV to Monica, that whole group was scrolls, but they really didn't explain that. Probably wasn't the right time to do that, but throwing it in this scene.
Yep.
And she points to the sky.
Yeah.
And Monica gets to get her space wings back.
Right.
And probably go see Fury on whatever Tahiti is.
Well, yeah. Is it Tahiti?
I don't know. It was Tahiti.
Yeah. I mean, he even said when she's walking into the theater, we'd like to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just makes the most sense that this is, how they're gonna move the next. I mean, I don't know, Captain America 2 or whatever, that section, obviously not the Doctor Strange section. I think that'll be with Wanda and everybody, but she'll be more.
We also have hanging out there in the ether in November, Eternals.
Right.
And Eternals is all about space gods, essentially. I mean, I need to do a lot more reading up on Eternals, but that's hanging there in the air, and nobody's been talking about
Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's connecting anything that happened in WandaVision with it, which is
nobody's been and nothing that's been talked about, like murmurs or anything or whatever. It's all been about WandaVision, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, like all that's kind of been the conversation.
Yeah.
We still have Eternals, and we still have Shang-Chi out there, and it's in MCU, so they're all going to be connected somehow. And so
eventually, I mean, again, to go back to kind of the Guardians, right? That first movie had, and the second one really had nothing to do with.
But the first one had the Power Stone.
I know, but it didn't have anything to do with anything else that was happening with the Avengers.
But that's the thing about the MCU is that each individual thing is its own thing with one or two connective tissues.
You can bring them together down the line or on the front end. They obviously didn't do it on the front end, at least with WandaVision. So, we still have Loki, and we still have...
we still have the time agency stuff with Loki, and we still have Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is going to be, I think, more connected to Black Widow. And I think Loki is going to be much more about, because it's dealing with time.
So it'll be like Doctor Strange's, the multiverse stuff.
So, and the second post-credit scene, also the smile that Monica works to as she starts to come to the realization, I get the coolest space again. The second one is a beautiful drone shot through a valley that's in the mountains. There's a giant lake. I screamed out Alkaline Lake. I know it's not Alkaline Lake. It would have been amazing. I had said earlier when Wanda flew off from Westview that she's going to land at the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York where Doctor Strange is.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went. I didn't think about this stuff that happened is much more the comic stuff that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And
so it's Lake Windermere?
It's Mount Wondergrave. We looked it up because Google. But this beautiful drone shot through this valley in it looks like the Alps. It's an Alp. Across the lake to this cottage by the lake. There's nothing else out there, and Wanda's sitting on the step drinking tea. So British. And the tea kettle goes off, and she gets up, and the drone follows her into the cabin, and she walks over to the stove and picks up the kettle, and the drone keeps going to the back of the house, and it comes around the corner, and there's Scarlet Witch, not Wanda, Scarlet Witch, floating in the air like Strange does when he's working his way through time She's also astro projecting like Strange does, and she's got the Darkhold, and she's reading through the Darkhold.
Yep.
In that, you hear Tommy and Billy crying out for mom for help.
Yep.
So with that, she's with the Darkhold is going to open up the multiverse.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
Now,
and she possibly, one of the theories is that she actually pulled Tommy and Billy out of the multiverse, that they weren't just figments of her imagination, which goes back to the thanks for choosing me to be your mom.
Yes.
And allows them to come back into the West Coast Avengers. And then there's also, they are confirmed to have filmed scenes for the multiverse Doctor Strange, the Doctor Strange movie. So they are, the actors themselves are going to be in that movie.
Okay, that makes sense, because if she's not quite done grieving, and she's, I mean, you're always grieving. You're always grieving over the loss of a loved one,
right?
Like always, and it gets a little bit easier each day, and it's always there. So she's still going to be grieving while she's working out these powers. Oh, by the way, she's got the freaking Darkhold,
right?
And which is, you know, super powerful dark magic book inside the MCU, and so she's going to do something kind of like what Strange did in Doctor Strange, where he started messing with the Time Stone because he read the book, and in the process, she's going to open something up.
Yes.
Always with the idea of bringing the boys in.
The warnings are at the end.
The warnings are after the spells.
After, yeah.
Yeah. Now we have to go watch Doctor Strange. We're actually doing an MCU watch through, and we've done Phase 1. And there's a lot of, like, you forget how much connection is in each movie with the other stuff, even in Phase 1. There's not as much in Phase 1 as there is later on. But
obviously, yeah.
But there's a lot
they
more there.
They didn't quite know what was going to happen at that point.
They didn't quite, you know. But with the idea of Wanda is a Nexus being, she's the same in all universes.
Right. They could actually be her kids in another universe.
Right.
Which allows her.
So everybody's saying that this was House of M, and it wasn't necessarily, had elements of House of M.
Right.
It had much more about the deal with Vision Quest and Vision and Scarlet Witch live in the suburbs, and it's like it was like several different
which is kind of what I thought, like, from the beginning. I was like, they're not going to do a direct comic. They've never done that.
No.
They've taken
all
pieces
the cool parts,
from different comics, put them together with, you know, some new stuff, so that, because otherwise, if you were just making a movie about a specific comic, everybody that's read that comic's going to know what's going to happen. So
that was the thing about Civil War, that everybody was like, I don't believe they're doing Civil War. And then they got done with Civil War, and everybody said that wasn't Civil War. And I'm like, well, it kind of was Civil War. They just took a bunch of the cool stuff they liked about Civil War and made it work within the story that they're telling right now within the MCU. And that's one of the things that I love about Kevin Feige and what Marvel Studios has been able to do, is they've taken all the stuff that they really, there's some really great, amazing stuff in the comics. There's some really shitty stuff in the comics.
and just weird.
Like, it's comics, which is what my explanation for everything when somebody's like, well, that person's dead. Comics. But, like, the idea that they're able to take a lot of the key stuff and bring it in is just is really cool.
Yeah,
I really
into
like
a little bit different story.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit before we go about the series as a whole.
Yep.
As we were getting ready to watch the post-credit scenes, my brain was kind of working on what I was thinking about the series. And again, like I said, I think I need to sit with this episode and the series overall, probably 7 or 8 more rewatches. My favorite show of all time that has been done is the Watchmen series.
Yeah.
That is perfect television for me, for all different reasons. This was not what I expected. I knew it was going to be weird. I knew it was going to be strange. But what this was, in my opinion, as it sits right now, is a twofold thing. It was about grief.
Yep.
and dealing with grief and the ramifications of grief and how you deal with grief and how it affects other people and all of that. And that was the main thing. This was also a backdoor origin story,
Yeah.
which my brain didn't figure out until we watched the post-credit scene. We came into Wanda and Pietro with their powers.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't use the word mutants in the MCU. And so
Right.
they just showed up with the powers, and we couldn't use Scarlet Witch, and we couldn't use Quicksilver and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. So with this show, they were able to go in and tell the origin of who Wanda is by using grief as the magnifying glass of who she was as a person and how she dealt with that grief. And that is next level storytelling. As much as we love the week to week speculation and it's House of M and this is how we're going to get the mutants and Magneto's going to show up and we're going to get Ian McKellen and like all that conversation is amazing and fun and awesome. In the end, this is a very simple story about dealing with grief and how you deal with it, how it affects others, and how we got to who this person is.
Yeah.
That's going to be an important part of the future of the MCU.
Yeah. And, I feel like Wanda and Vision didn't really get the time that they deserved because we were moving into Infinity War. By the time we got introduced to them, we're already to Age of Ultron and we're barreling into Thanos, right? And so we just didn't have any time to actually get to know
and they
them.
are third, fourth level characters.
Right. Well, to be fair, Iron Man is a third or fourth level character.
But in the MCU,
in this,
in this
but
version, yeah.
they shouldn't be because they had amazing stories and they were, it was. I was kind of thinking about that when we were watching the intro. That I don't know if Vision is in, the whole Marvel, speeding through. I don't know if Vision's in them at all, and Wanda, that I could tell was only in when the word Marvel finally kind of comes up and you can see people in the letters.
Yeah.
She's in like the M a little bit and that's it. And you're like, but this is a whole show about them, and they have big stories. So more Wanda and Vision going forward.
I think if they're going to really do, if they're really going to set up the West Coast Avengers to be Phase 5, we got what's going on and what everything with all the TV shows and the movies that are coming out in Phase 4 and stuff like that. Everybody wanted the Fantastic Phase 4 is what everybody wanted, but it just because of the timing of everything, it just never was going to work. They had to set up this story of what they wanted to do in Phase 4 and getting into Phase 5 before the Fox deal even started to happen.
Gives it a minute to breathe.
But I feel like we're going to get something in Phase 5, into Phase 4, into Phase 5, with the idea of them being the anchor of what will end up being the next generation of Marvel characters, but also viewers.
Yeah.
By the time we get to that point, it'll be 15 years from when we started with Iron Man, and now we're going into Phase 4 and Phase 5. Mm-hmm. It'll be 15, 16, 17 years. The next generation of kids are going to be wanting characters that they can identify with, and if they want somebody to identify with, it's going to be this younger group.
Right. Well, kids like our grandkids who, and even like our older grandkids have always known Iron Man and
Spider-Man
and Spider-Man and Captain America. Those have always been there for them
as MCU
character in the MCU, and those movies and everything have always been there for them. And so they'll be in their teens and early 20s by the time that stuff comes out. And
Billy and Tommy were 8, 9-ish. And we are in 2023 within the timeline of the MCU. So you give it, another, 10 years, that puts them in their early teens. Now it'll probably be, It'll be the late
teens.
teens. So you know, you give it 6 or 7 years. They're 14, 15 in that time period, and they need to go live on the West Coast with mom and dad, and that kind of thing is set up. And then you get Stature, who's going to be in her 20s by that point in time. And
so Scarlet Witch she does not know that Vision put his memories.
No.
So that's a potential storyline down the road too, is her maybe going crazy or whatever, and then a couple movies down the road, she finds out that
I honestly think White Vision with real Visions, with OG Vision's memories, is going to be the thing that brings Wanda back from the precipice in Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Now, I do think, however, the multiverse will be opened.
Yeah.
And then Strange is going to try to stop her, and it's going to go bad, and then the finale is going to be White Vision showing up, or it's going to be Strange going to White Vision because he knows about him somehow and saying, "Okay."
I think they're gonna give it a couple of movies.
They might give it a minute, but I just like the idea of he's out there now on his own, learning about himself.
Yep.
And in the meantime, the Scarlet Witch is figuring out who she is too.
Yeah.
And those paths are no longer going to be together. They're obviously going to split. They've already obviously split,
right.
but she is definitely going down she's going towards the dark side. Hence the dark colors, and he's definitely going to the light side, definitely the white colors,
right?
Maybe and stuff. So, anything else from the show or the episodes that we missed?
Well, I'm sure there's tons.
But overall, I really love the series.
Yep.
And like I said, we'll watch it several more times. Let us know what you thought of the WandaVision final episode called the season finale and the series overall in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please be nice to us. Like we said, we're coming at it from the MCU point of view. It's probably too late at the end of the video to have you hear that. And until next time, call members. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.